I'm Chris Putnam, by the way, from Colleyville City Council. I actually did not organize this meeting. I was invited to participate. The folks that have organized, there's two different citizen groups in town, Colleyville Citizens Opposed to High Density, and then TakeBackColleyville.org. And then, of course, Local News Only, which is our local online paper. They had some involvement helping set all this up as well. The city is currently entertaining a new comprehensive plan process that's called Destination Colleyville. It is important to understand kind of what a comprehensive plan is and what the impacts potentially of a comprehensive plan are. It is a strategic document that basically lays out the so-called vision and strategy for the city, in this case for the next 20 years. But what you'll hear, some of my colleagues and the mayor say is that this is just a very high-level document. It's just about, it's a vision, we can change it, there's things that we can modify, along the way. But what they don't tell you is that it is in fact a policy document. We're at kind of a critical point. We have approved a lot of these developments in the last 10 years in particular during the current administration. And now the question is, how aggressively do we want to continue to promote those sorts of developments as opposed to protecting our open space, our remaining open space, as well as protecting our existing large lot neighborhoods and estate neighborhoods and estate home sites? Because the real implication, the exercise here, is not the impact to our open space, because we don't have a lot left. I mean, there is some of that going on. We don't have a lot left. It's what happens when the party's over for the real estate community relative to that open space, and we start then having to look at redeveloping other places in town. Do we want large lots to go to smaller lots? Do we want more zero-lot communities? Do we want more townhomes? Do we want more condos? Those sorts of things. Again, there's at least a large segment of the population in town that believes that what makes Colleyville unique and different, and what separates us from our neighbors, like South Lake, like Flower Mill, like Plano, like Frisco, is the basic fundamental semi-rural character of our community. We have a lot of language actually in the comprehensive plan that describes these character elements and reinforces that those are the character elements in our community that people love about Colleyville. And so the question is, do we protect those character elements, or do we race to kind of eliminate them? And they're really pressuring the city, and they're pressuring the residents around there to accept some of these higher density developments. In fact, we just had an example recently on the Lavaca Trail where a developer wanted to come in and basically put 16 homes on 4 acres next to a farm. And fortunately, we managed to kill it, or at least we thought we managed to kill it, and then not 3 days later, the developer is in the office with city staff pressuring a resident, to capitulate and agree to remove their opposition to the project. So that's kind of the mentality that we're dealing with in town right now. What benefit is there to our community, to our residents and taxpayers, just to grow for growth's sake? Just to add more people and more homes. It's not going to make your taxes go down. Crime's not going to get better. And schools aren't going to be less crowded. The only people that benefit are government, who gets more revenue, and the real estate community. And as we kind of understand the process a little bit better and who makes up these so-called citizen communities, I think what you'll understand, pretty quickly is the reason we get here is because at least in the last 10 years, our city's been run by the real estate community. And unless the residents say, we've had enough, and we need to kind of roll back some of this behavior that we've been doing in terms of, ignoring our own standards just so that we can make some people money, then it's going to continue. And that is really the fulcrum point, the decision point that we're at today, no matter what anybody will tell you. Sometimes you'll get one story when these developments are approved, like the condos, for example, on 26 were marketed as high-end luxury condo environments. Well, of course, now they're all for rent. And we all know what happens when condos ultimately become rentals. You look at 10, 15, 20 years from now, and they're apartments. It's actually our most dense development in town, and some members of our city staff actually own rental properties in that development. So here's the Land Development Code language. This is straight out of our own documents. Again, maximum residential permitted shall not exceed 1.8 dwelling units per gross acre. The minimum residential lot size shall be 13,000 square feet with an average of 16,000. So that's the law in Colleyville today. in September, we actually changed the math. We changed the math so that those numbers look more favorable. In this case, look at the gross density numbers. And this is an important point as we talk about what's happened here in the last couple of weeks. As you can see, like it was 16,5,967. Now it's a 6,437,27. So when politicians or when city staff start talking about, oh, we want to preserve the 1.8 target, it's not a target, it's a maximum. And understand that 1.8 doesn't mean 1.8 because we changed the definition and we changed the calculation to make it look better. So it's a game.
How did that get done?
That was done in a pre-council session. I didn't understand that there wasn't going to be a vote. So we have in pre-council, we do a lot of discussion and make decisions that never make it to a public hearing or an agenda. And this was one of those. And in this case, Mayor looks around the table, is everybody okay with this? And people go, yeah. And there's the change.
Was that a recommendation of staff?
It was, and it was a recommendation of staff at the time that we had two really high density developments in front of us to vote on. So it was awfully coincidental that we decided to change the calculation, the interpretation of the calculation as we're contemplating a vote. This is what the plan said. It said we're going to revise our standards to allow greater flexibility in lot sizes. That's political speak, but we're going to make it more dense. We're going to lift this 1.8 number and do something different because the 1.8 number is too restrictive. So look, the intent is absolutely clear. The document changed, but the intent hasn't changed. And that's very, very important to understand. And that's why I can't support this plan, because I know what we want to do. Colleyville is getting more dense. So what did we do? We turned around and we changed the definition. We added agriculture to the definition. So we included like bigger land mass to get to that calculation. Well, guess what was conveniently left out of that calculation? The village of Colleyville, which is the most dense property we have in town. So we said we're going to include agriculture, which is a separate designation than residential, but we're not going to include PUD C, which is commercial, which is the village. You know why? It just makes the number look good. It's a game. So they're going to tell you one thing and do something else. So what's the solution? The solution is not to throw the thing out. That's not the solution at all. We need a comprehensive plan, and actually about 80% of the plan is really good. And this is the political reality. They don't want this discussion happening after the first of the year when 3 city council people up for re-election.
That's right.
It'll be just like Blake. They'll tell you whatever you want to hear, and then 2 weeks later, we'll get the bill. Your question you have to ask yourself in this community is, who do you trust? Do you trust people that lie to you and are still lying to you, regardless of whether they're right or wrong, they're lying to you? Or do you trust people that have tried to tell you the truth about what's really happening in town? We can productively have these discussions in the public forum in a polite way and a respectful way.
Yes.
But our leaders don't want to do it that way. In the 2004 plan, when they laid out their ideas for each section of town, they were explicit in terms of how they were going to change the code. You know, what the impact was going to be of the change. We don't do that in this document. It's been dumbed down so you don't ask questions. We have to have a baseline calculation for density. This thing where the ball keeps moving is no good.
Ridiculous.
And honestly, I don't trust the process because the data keeps changing to fit the narrative. It's just straight politics. And I just think that's ridiculous in a town like Colleyville. We just should be honest with people about what we're trying to accomplish and have an honest debate about whether that's right or wrong. And the majority will win. So the city council, not staff, not a consultant, needs to agree on how we calculate density today. You should at least be able to understand what's going to go in near you in your neighborhood and have some say about it in the process.
That's right.
Whether it's positive or negative, by the way, you may not win. That's the way government works, you may not win. But we should at least tell people what's going to happen and have a discussion. Don't let somebody tell you, this is just a vision, don't pay attention, nothing to see here. When you have 10 years to consolidate political power and you and your buddies are in the real estate business, this is the kind of thing that starts happening. The mayor's going to say, we've had 18 months to discuss this. Well, his hand-picked committee discussed it for 18 months, but we've only been discussing it for a month, and that includes me, by the way.
That's right.
The first meeting I got invited to was 6 weeks ago at a workshop.
Wow. That's right.
And then call and send emails to your elected officials. The second most important thing to do right now, that the show that meeting Tuesday, is call your elected officials, particularly call the ones that are up for re-election. and say, hey, I don't agree with you on this, I'm on your game, I know what you guys are trying to do, I don't care what you tell me, and we're gonna work against you. And then what's really important is if this passes on Tuesday, and it very well could, because believe me, there's a lot of momentum out there to get this out of the way so people don't have to deal with that after the first year, as I mentioned to you. Follow the process. And I know it's really hard. And then, of course, participate in the process. So the three folks that are up for election are the mayor, Carol and Chuck Mike.
Question, the existing comprehensive plan that's in place from say to 2004 is good through 2025. Why the rush?
It's a great question. Because I would ask the same question, if we're not going to change anything, if we're reasserting our desire to have this 1.8, which as we now know is not 1.8, why do we need to change? Well, the answer to that question is because we do want to change it. We absolutely do. You have to, before you can make a code change, you have to change the plan.
But we have a community that doesn't agree with what's currently in process.
Well, the other thing the establishment guys will tell you, the 10-year plus guys on the council will tell you, is that you're a small minority group of people who are just voting.
Is there any legitimate reason why the 2004 plan shouldn't stand as it is?
But they're going to say, it's 1.8, we're good with 1.8. Again, just remember, it's not 1.8. The calculation changed, we're proving stuff well beyond 1.8, and there's a desire to do more. That's why we're doing it. The most important thing you can do is what you're doing right now. We need more people in the community that dig in and understand these issues, particularly if you care about the issue and you want to understand how it impacts you or your neighborhood or your property. And the one thing that gets their attention is when people show up to those meetings. Your voice is as important as anybody sitting in that chair up there. You have a right to be heard.
That's right.
You should demand the right to be heard. This community doesn't belong to developers, it doesn't belong to real estate, it doesn't belong to politicians, it belongs to the people that live in Colleyville.
I think there's a lot of concern by the citizens in Colleyville that this thing has come up on us so quickly, even though it's been looked at by what he referred to as a hand-picked committee for the last 18 months.
It's shocking to me to hear and see what is happening with our city. And it's even more shocking that we have officials who are letting it happen.
More people need to be involved, and they need to get a deeper understanding, especially if they truly are going to take away a lot of the open spaces that we like in Colleyville. And it appears that's the goal. And that's, for all of us that live here, that's something we really cherish in the cities.
The council needs to be a little more honest with us on everything that goes forward. I understand there's going to be a lot of development, and just appropriate and just be truthful about the whole thing.
I don't like what's going on in Colleyville.
We've been concerned about what's been going on with Colleyville and the mistrust, and the meeting we came to tonight was extremely informative. Glad we came. There was a lot of people here.
I think it's totally wrong. I think the city council needs to change, period.